In April 2002, a routine Special Forces raid in Kandahar province uncovered something that should not exist. What began as a simple equipment recovery mission triggered Emergency Protocol Nephilim-7, a directive reserved for biological anomalies beyond known science. The official report lists 7 enemy combatants killed. The classified addendum tells another story. This is the declassified account of the Kandahar Giant incident, reconstructed from leaked documents and silenced testimony. Buried for over 2 decades, erased from records and locked behind national security, this is the truth they tried to destroy. This is their story. The compound raid began like 40 others that month. Kick the door, clear the rooms, bag the equipment, extract before dawn. Captain David Reeves led his 12-man Special Forces ODA team through the rubble of what intelligence had designated Target Compound 7, a Soviet-era ammunition depot 3 clicks southeast of Kandahar. The mission brief was straightforward: recover stolen NATO communications gear, specifically AN/PRC-152 radios that had disappeared from a logistics convoy ambushed 2 weeks prior. The Taliban were selling American equipment to the highest bidder. Washington wanted it back before it ended up in Iran. The April night was cold enough to see breath inside the thermal optics. Reeves checked his watch. 02:47 hours. They had a 3-hour window before the local population woke for morning prayers. His team moved with the mechanical efficiency of men who had run this playbook too many times to count. Sergeant First Class Tommy Vaughn handled breaching. Staff Sergeant Luis Ramirez ran point. Specialist Jake Holland worked comms. The building was exactly where the satellite imagery said it would be. A squat concrete structure with blast-reinforced walls, half collapsed from what looked like a direct hit during the Soviet occupation 20 years earlier. What the satellite imagery had not shown was the cave system. Vaughn found it behind a false wall in what had been a storage room. The stones had been moved recently. Dust patterns showed disturbance within the last 72 hours. Ramirez signaled contact, rifle trained on the darkness beyond. Reeves moved forward, activating the weapon-mounted surefire. The beam cut through absolute black, revealing a tunnel descending at a 30-degree angle. The walls were not structural. This was natural geology, limestone karst formations common to the region. The Soviets had built their depot over an existing cave entrance. Holland keyed his radio. "Command, this is Wraith 6. We have unexpected subsurface access at primary target. Requesting guidance." Static. Then, "Wraith 6, command. Investigate and report. Stolen equipment may be stored below ground. Proceed with caution." They descended. The air changed 40 meters in. Temperature dropped 15 degrees. Reeves felt it through his gloves, that bone-deep cold that comes from stone that never sees sunlight. The tunnel widened into a chamber roughly 12 meters across. Vaughn's helmet light swept the space. What it revealed stopped the entire column. 7 bodies. Taliban fighters, judging by the weaponry scattered around them. AK-47s, RPG launcher, Chinese-manufactured grenades. But the state of the corpses was wrong. Reeves had seen combat deaths across 3 deployments. He knew what bullets did to human tissue, what shrapnel looked like, what blast overpressure caused. This was none of those things. Blunt force trauma, massive, catastrophic, unsurvivable blunt force trauma. One fighter's chest cavity was collapsed inward, sternum and ribs driven into the thoracic cavity with such force that Reeves could see the spinal column through the ruptured tissue. Another had sustained cranial damage inconsistent with any weapon in theater. The skull was not shattered but compressed, as if caught in industrial machinery. A third body lay against the far wall, neck elongated by 12 centimeters, cervical vertebrae separated by traction force. No blood spatter patterns, no defensive wounds, no spent shell casings. "Sir," Ramirez's voice was tight, "these men weren't shot, they were beaten to death." Reeves knelt beside the nearest corpse. Rigor mortis was complete, but decomposition minimal. Time of death, approximately 36 to 48 hours prior. He keyed his radio. Command Wraith 6, we have 7 enemy KIA at subsurface location. Cause of death inconclusive. Appears to be close quarters combat, but wounds are... The radio shrieked, not static, something else. A sound like metal scraping metal, like a frequency that shouldn't exist on military bandwidth. Holland yanked his headset off, blood trickling from his left ear. The sound cut out. In the silence that followed, they all heard it. Breathing. Deep, rhythmic, coming from the tunnel that continued beyond the chamber. Not human breathing. The lung capacity was wrong. The resonance was wrong. It sounded like a bellows, like something designed to process air in quantities no mammalian respiratory system could handle. Vaughn brought his rifle up. Contact front! It emerged from the darkness at 0304 hours, and the first thing Reeves noticed was the smell, copper and ammonia and something organic that his brain refused to categorize. The second thing was the height. 4.2 meters, give or take 10 centimeters. The third thing was that it should not exist. Bipedal, bilateral symmetry, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But the proportions were architecturally impossible. The skeletal structure could not support that mass under Earth's gravitational constant. The femur alone would require bone density 4 times human standard to prevent catastrophic failure. The cranium was elongated, roughly 40 centimeters from brow to occipital bone. The mandible was prognathic, jutting forward with teeth that had no analog in hominid evolution. It wore animal hides, stitched with what looked like sinew. In its right hand, it held a spear, a sharpened shaft of wood 2 meters long, the tip hardened by fire. It looked at them. The eyes were too far apart, set in deep orbital sockets that suggested nocturnal adaptation. The pupils dilated. It recognized them as threats. Reeves fired first. 3-round burst, center mass standard engagement protocol. The 5.56 millimeter NATO rounds struck flesh. He saw the impact. He saw blood. But the entity did not fall. It tilted its head, examining the wounds with what looked like curiosity, then roared. The sound was not vocalization. It was a pressure wave. Reeves felt it in his chest cavity, felt his lungs compress, felt the air forced from his body. Holland's helmet camera shattered. The radio sparked and died, and then it charged. Vaughn emptied his magazine. Ramirez went full automatic. The cave lit up with muzzle flash, the concussive force of sustained fire in an enclosed space loud enough to rupture eardrums. Reeves saw rounds connect, saw flesh tear, saw bone beneath. But it kept coming. It swung the spear like a club. Vaughn tried to dodge. The impact caught him across the torso and threw him 6 meters into the cave wall. Reeves heard ribs break, heard the wet sound of internal bleeding beginning. Holland was screaming into a dead radio. Ramirez was reloading. Reeves drew his sidearm and fired point blank into the entity's skull. The Beretta M9 bucked in his hand. The round penetrated. Exit wound sprayed the cave wall. The entity staggered, fell to one knee. Reeves fired again and again until the slide locked back on an empty chamber. It collapsed at 0307 hours. Reeves checked for pulse, found none, checked again. The flesh was cooling rapidly, losing temperature faster than mammalian tissue should. He looked at Vaughn. The sergeant was alive but not conscious, breathing shallow, blood pooling beneath him. They needed Cassivac. They needed extraction. They needed to explain to command why 7 Taliban fighters and 1 impossible cryptid were dead in a cave that officially did not exist. Ramirez was staring at the corpse. What the hell is that? Reeves keyed his radio. Static. He tried his backup. Nothing. The equipment was fried. He pulled out his sat phone, the emergency line that bypassed normal channels, dialed the number he had been given during mission briefing, the one labeled for extreme contingencies only. It rang twice, a voice answered. No identification, no greeting, just authenticate. Wraith 6, authentication code, November Echo, Papa Hotel India Lima, 7. Silence then. Stand by for immediate extraction. Maintain position. Do not attempt to move the specimen. Repeat, do not move the specimen. Personnel en route. ETA 20 minutes. This incident is now classified under Emergency Protocol Nephilim-7. You are not to discuss this with anyone outside designated clearance. Do you understand? Reeves looked at the thing on the cave floor, at Vaughn bleeding out, at the Taliban corpses with their impossible wounds, at the spear, handmade, primitive, older than any military conflict in this region. I understand. The line went dead. In the silence, Reeves heard it, the sound of helicopter rotors in the distance, approaching fast. Black helicopters, no markings. And he realized with cold certainty that whoever was coming had been waiting for this call. They had a protocol. They had a classification level. They had done this before. His career ended at 0309 hours, 3 minutes before the extraction team arrived, and everything he had seen stopped being real. The helicopter that extracted them from the cave was not Army. Reeves knew every airframe in theater. Black Hawks, Chinooks, Little Birds. This was something else. No tail number, no unit designation. The crew wore flight suits with patches that had been removed, the Velcro backing still visible in the infrared light. They loaded Vaughn onto a stretcher without speaking. 2 men in CBRN suits approached the entity's corpse with equipment Reeves did not recognize. Portable containment unit, refrigeration system humming at frequencies that made his teeth ache, biohazard protocols that exceeded anything he had seen in standard hazmat training. They sedated Vaughn before liftoff. Reeves watched the needle go in, watched his sergeant's eyes roll back. One of the crew members turned to him. "You too, Captain." "I'm not injured." Non-negotiable. The syringe was already in the man's hand. Reeves felt the prick in his neck before he could protest. The world went soft at the edges. He tried to fight it, tried to stay conscious, failed. He woke in a room with no windows. White walls, fluorescent lighting at exactly 60 hertz, the hum just loud enough to prevent silence. Hospital bed, but not a hospital. The equipment was too new, too specialized. Cardiac monitor, IV drip. Biometric sensors he could not identify. His uniform was gone. He wore surgical scrubs, light blue, no markings. The door had no handle on the inside. Reeves sat up, his head pounded. Sodium pentothal, maybe. Or midazolam. Something to ensure compliance during transport. He checked his arms. No restraints, no visible injuries. The IV line ran saline, nothing else. He pulled it out, felt the sharp sting, applied pressure. The cardiac monitor beeped faster. Within 30 seconds, the door opened. A woman entered. Late 40s, gray suit, ID badge clipped to her lapel with the photograph facing inward so he could not read the name. She carried a tablet and a file folder, actual paper, not digital, which meant classification level high enough to avoid electronic records. "Captain Reeves, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Caney. I need to ask you some questions." "Where am I?" "A secure medical facility. Your sergeant is receiving treatment. He'll survive, though he has 7 fractured ribs, a ruptured spleen, and internal bleeding that required emergency surgery. The rest of your team is being debriefed separately. You've been unconscious for 14 hours. It's now 1820 hours, April 19th. Reeves processed that. 14 hours, long enough to move them anywhere. "What facility?" Caney sat in the chair beside the bed. She opened the folder. Inside were photographs, the cave, the Taliban bodies, the entity, close-ups of the wounds, the bone structure, the impossible biology. "Before we continue, I need to confirm your security clearance level." "Secret combat arms, standard for special forces. As of 0309 hours yesterday, your clearance was upgraded to TSSCI with a Special Access Program designation. You are now operating under what we call a need to know beyond need to know framework. Everything you experienced in that cave is classified at a level that does not officially exist. The entity you encountered is designated a Class 4 biological anomaly under the Dulce Protocol. Do you understand what that means? Reeves stared at her. No, Caney smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. It means you're not the first person to encounter one. It means we have procedures for this. It means what you saw has happened before, and it will happen again, and your job now is to tell me everything so we can determine whether this was an isolated incident or part of a larger pattern. She laid the photographs on the bed. One showed the entity's skull, post-mortem, with measurement calipers indicating cranial capacity. Another showed tissue samples under electron microscopy, cellular structure that looked almost human, but diverged at the molecular level. A third showed dental analysis, 34 teeth, not 32, with canine development suggesting carnivorous diet. We've been tracking reports of anomalous humanoid encounters in Central Asia since 1979, Caney said. Soviet records recovered after the collapse indicated multiple incidents during their occupation of Afghanistan. They called them Almas, the wild men of the mountains. We have documentation of at least 6 confirmed engagements between Soviet forces and entities matching this description. In every case, the Soviets attempted capture. In every case, they failed. The specimens were too aggressive, too resilient. Standard small arms fire proved insufficient for incapacitation. Reeves found his voice. You're telling me the military knows these things exist? A subset of the military knows. Defense Intelligence Agency, specifically. There's a division you've never heard of. We call it the Office of Tactical Xenobiology. Our mandate is to identify, document, and when possible, secure non-human biological entities that pose potential threats to operational security. The Kandahar specimen is the first intact recovery in 23 years. The last one was in Dagestan, 2001. Russian Spetsnaz engagement. The entity was killed, but the body was destroyed in a retaliatory airstrike before we could negotiate access. She pulled another photograph from the folder. This one was older, black and white, dated 1986. It showed a similar entity, slightly smaller, suspended in what looked like a cryogenic containment unit. The location stamp read, Dugway Proving Ground, Utah. This specimen was recovered from a cave system in the Hindu Kush in 1984. Joint NATO operation. The entity attacked a French Alpine unit conducting high-altitude reconnaissance. 3 soldiers killed in action. The 4th survived long enough to radio for support. When the recovery team arrived, they found the entity feeding on the bodies. Reeves felt his stomach turn. Feeding. Exsanguination of corpses, consumption of soft tissue, bone marrow extraction. The behavioral profile suggests opportunistic scavenging, though we can't rule out predatory hunting. Stomach content analysis from the 84 specimen showed human remains, goat remains, and organic material we could not identify. Carbon dating on the unidentified tissue came back inconclusive. The degradation rate was inconsistent with known decomposition models. Connie closed the folder. The question we need to answer, Captain, is whether what you encountered was a solitary individual or part of a population. The cave system beneath that compound, how extensive was it? Reeves thought back. The tunnel. The chamber. The darkness beyond where the entity had emerged. We only cleared the first room. There were passages leading deeper. We didn't have time to explore before it attacked. Understood. Kiney made a note on her tablet. Ground-penetrating radars conducting surveys now. Preliminary results show the cave network extends at least 3 kilometers in multiple directions. We've detected thermal signatures in the deeper sections. 17 distinct heat sources, all approximately human-sized, all stationary. We don't know if they're alive. 17. Reeves processed that. The entity he had killed was not alone. There's something else, Caney said. The Taliban fighters you found. We ran forensic analysis on their wounds. Time of death was consistent with your estimate, 36 to 48 hours before your team arrived. But here's what's interesting. They were armed. They had ammunition. They had grenades. And yet not a single shot was fired. No discharged weapons. No explosive residue. They saw the entity and they didn't fight back. Why? Caney pulled up a video on her tablet. Helmet cam footage. Grainy night vision green. A cave. A figure in the darkness. And then, nothing. The camera went dead. This is from a Soviet patrol, 1982, recovered from a KIA site in Paktia province. Watch what happens when they shine a light on it. She played the clip. The Soviet soldier's flashlight beam hit the entity's eyes. There was a flash, not from the light, but from the entity itself. Bioluminescence, maybe, or something else. And then the soldier collapsed. Cardiac arrest, according to the Soviet autopsy report. No wounds, no toxins, just sudden catastrophic system failure. They theorized a defense mechanism, Caney said. Electromagnetic pulse, localized, organic in origin, or possibly infrasound, frequencies below human hearing that disrupt cardiac rhythm. We don't know. The 84 specimen was dead on arrival. We couldn't test it. But if your specimen is intact... The door opened. A man in a white coat entered, late 30s, surgical gloves still on, blood spatter on his scrubs. He looked at Caney. "We need to talk. Now." Caney stood. "Captain, wait here." They stepped into the hallway. Reeves could hear them through the door, voices low but urgent. He caught fragments. Cellular regeneration, active post-mortem, and neural tissue still conducting electrical impulses 6 hours after confirmed death, and recommendation immediate incineration before. The lights went out. Emergency backup engaged 3 seconds later, bathing the room in red. An alarm began to sound, not the standard fire alarm, but something else. 3 short bursts. Pause. 3 short bursts. Lockdown protocol. Caney rushed back in. Her face was pale. "Get dressed, now." She threw his uniform at him, cleaned, pressed, his name tape and rank still intact. Reeves pulled on his pants, his boots. "What's happening?" "The specimen. It's awake." The facility was underground. Reeves realized this as Caney led him through corridors with no exterior windows, past blast doors designed to seal from the inside, through airlocks that cycled with the hiss of positive pressure systems. The emergency lighting painted everything the color of old blood. Personnel moved past them in controlled panic, scientists in lab coats, security contractors in unmarked tactical gear, military personnel with insignia he did not recognize. "The specimen was clinically dead," Connie said, moving fast. "No pulse, no respiration, core temperature dropping. We had it in cold storage, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, pending full autopsy. Then, at 17:53 hours, the biometric sensors detected electrical activity, neural tissue firing, autonomic nervous system rebooting. By 1802, it had a heartbeat. By 1809, it was conscious." They reached an observation room. Reinforced glass, 2 inches thick, overlooking what looked like an operating theater. Except the operating table was empty. Restraints hung loose, torn through, not unbuckled, torn. The leather straps had been ripped apart with enough force to leave shreds hanging from the metal anchors. A body lay on the floor. Security contractor, throat crushed, neck bent at an angle incompatible with survival. Blood pooled beneath him, still spreading. Time of death, minutes ago. "It's in the ventilation system," someone said. Reeves turned. A man in a colonel's uniform, no name tape, just a unit patch he did not recognize. A black triangle with a red eye in the center. "We've sealed the primary ducts, but it punched through the secondary access in cell block C. We're tracking it by thermal signature, but it's moving faster than anything that size should be able to move." Caney pulled up a schematic on a wall monitor. The facility was massive, 4 subterranean levels, each the size of an aircraft hangar. They were on level 2. The entity was currently on level 4, moving toward what the schematic labeled Biocontainment Alpha. "What's in Biocontainment Alpha?" Reeves asked. The colonel looked at him. "The other specimens." Reeves felt something cold settle in his chest. "How many others?" 12. Collected over 40 years. Most are deceased. Skeletal remains, tissue samples, partial specimens. But 3 are intact, cryogenically preserved. And if what we're seeing is accurate, if these things can resurrect from clinical death. An explosion shook the facility. Not gunfire, something heavier, breaching charge. The lights flickered, the schematic updated. A section of level 4 went red. Hull breach, biocontainment alpha. Caney grabbed a radio. "All personnel, this is Code Nephilim. I repeat, Code Nephilim. Initiate Protocol Samson. Authorization Caney 7 Echo Tango. Confirm." Static. Then, confirmed. Protocol Samson authorized. Facility detonation in 30 minutes. Reeves stared at her. "You're going to blow the facility." "We're going to sterilize it," Caney said. "Thermite charges, white phosphorus, then structural collapse. Bury everything under 200 feet of rock and concrete. It's the contingency. It's always been the contingency. We cannot let these things reach the surface." The evacuation was chaos. Personnel streaming toward the main elevator shaft, the only exit from the underground complex. Reeves followed Caney, the colonel beside them, weapon drawn. They passed laboratories with equipment still running, centrifuges spinning, electron microscopes active, specimen jars lined up on shelves. One jar held something that looked almost like a human fetus, but with too many fingers. Another held an organ Reeves could not identify, suspended in formaldehyde, pulsing faintly as if still alive. They reached the elevator, 20 people already crammed inside. The colonel keyed the override. "Next car, go." The doors closed. They waited. The schematic on the wall showed the entity. Entities now, plural, 4 thermal signatures moving together, ascending from level 4, fast, too fast. The elevator indicator showed the car rising, level 3, level 2, level 1. It stopped. Emergency brake engaged. Someone had hit the override from inside. Screaming came through the elevator shaft, muffled by distance and steel. Then silence. Then the sound of tearing metal. The colonel backed away from the door. Stairs, now. They ran. The emergency stairwell was narrow, concrete, designed for personnel evacuation during fire or structural failure. Reeves took the steps 3 at a time. Behind them, the sound of something heavy hitting the elevator shaft floor. The impact was seismic. Whatever had fallen or jumped had done so from at least 50 feet up. Level 1. The exit was a reinforced blast door, the kind designed to withstand overpressure from a nearby detonation. Caney swiped her badge. The lock disengaged. They pushed through into desert night, stars overhead, cold air that tasted like freedom. Reeves recognized the landscape. Nevada. The facility was somewhere in the Nevada test site, the sprawling government reservation where nuclear weapons had been detonated for decades. Mountains in the distance, flat hardpan in every direction, and 300 meters away, a parking area with 2 helicopters spooling up, rotors already turning. They ran. Behind them, the blast door exploded outward. 4 entities emerged. The one Reeves had killed, now resurrected, and 3 others moving with pack coordination. The colonel fired full automatic. The rounds hit, but the entities did not slow. One threw a chunk of concrete that struck the colonel's center mass, lifting him off his feet. He did not get up. Caney grabbed Reeves. "Run!" 50 meters to the helicopters, 40. The entities were faster, 30 meters. Reeves felt claws rake his back, felt skin tear, felt himself falling. Caney turned, fired a flare gun point blank into the entity's face. It screamed. The magnesium burned at 3,000 degrees. The entity reeled back. Hands grabbed Reeves, pulled him up. The helicopter door gunner opened fire, the M240 roaring. The entities scattered. One went down. The others retreated. Reeves was hauled into the helicopter. Caney climbed in after. The aircraft banked hard, gaining altitude. Through the open door, Reeves saw the entities standing at the facility entrance, watching. And then the desert turned white. Thermite ignited first, 1600 degrees Celsius. The white phosphorus came next, burning with chemical fury. Then, the structural charges detonated in sequence, and the entire facility collapsed inward, 4 levels falling into a crater that swallowed everything. The shockwave hit the helicopter. The pilot fought for control. Reeves watched the fireball rise, watched the mushroom cloud form, watched the place where the entities had been standing vanish beneath collapsing concrete and flame. Caney was on a radio. "Command, this is Caney. Facility is lost. Protocol Samson executed successfully. Containment breach resolved. Requesting immediate medical and debriefing team at alternate location." Static, then. "Understood. Proceed to Site 12. And Dr. Kane, this conversation never happened. That facility never existed." She looked at Reeves, blood soaked through his shirt from the claw marks. "What you experience tonight will be classified under national security directives that prohibit disclosure for 75 years. You will sign documents, you will undergo evaluation, and if you ever speak about this, you will spend the rest of your life in a federal facility where your family will be told you died in a training accident." Reeves nodded. "The Taliban fighters. They knew what was down there." "Local populations have known for centuries," Caney said. "They have names for them, stories, warnings. The Soviets ignored those warnings, we ignored them, and now 12 specimens are ash, and the only evidence is sitting in this helicopter, bleeding onto government upholstery." She handed him a folder. Inside were documents, non-disclosure agreements, medical discharge papers, a new identity. "Captain David Reeves was killed in action during a classified operation. There will be a funeral. There will be a flag. But you, the man in this helicopter, you don't exist anymore." The helicopter turned north, toward Site 12, toward debriefing, toward a life built on silence and the weight of knowledge that could never be shared. Reeves closed his eyes. He could still see the entity's eyes in the cave, intelligent, aware, recognizing him as competition. When he opened them again, they were descending toward a facility that did not appear on any map. And somewhere beneath the Nevada desert, buried under rubble and fire, 12 specimens were becoming nothing but classified memories in a file that would remain sealed until everyone who knew the truth was dead. But the truth persisted, in other caves, in other countries, waiting for the next soldier to stumble into territory that humanity had never truly conquered. The door closed behind him. The debriefing began. And 3,000 miles away, 17 thermal signatures moved deeper into the earth, back into the darkness where they had always been. Waiting,